We're going to talk about 4 recent movies on Amazon Prime, including one that just dropped last week, One Night in Miami. A lot of Oscar buzz around that film. Let's talk about these movies right now. Hey everybody, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to another multi-movie review for some 2020 entries, things that have popped up on Amazon in the last month, 2-3 months that I haven't gotten to yet. But one that we're going to focus on up top, One Night in Miami, just dropped last week. It was released in limited theaters in December, and now you can watch it on Amazon Prime. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Sylvie's Love. We're going to talk about Get Duked, and a documentary called Time. And 3 of these 4 movies actually revolve around African American history, black culture, black persecution. But I'm realizing now that Get Duked, actually, which is about a bunch of white kids in England, it actually is, though, also about class structure. So really all 4 of these movies are sort of intertwined with a theme of sort of class in the world and stuff like that. So for what it's worth. But first, we are going to talk about One Night in Miami. This is getting a lot of Oscar buzz, and we'll see if that's with good reason or not. But Oscar winner Regina King, for her acting, she won for If Beale Street Could Talk 2 or 3 years ago. This is her directorial debut. Now, she's directed a lot of TV episodes, including things like This Is Us and Scandal, but here she has her feature film debut, and this is based on a stage play, as a lot of movies recently have been taken from the stage and put right onto the screen. And yeah, musicals we always get that with, and we got it earlier with Prom on Netflix a couple months ago, but from a stage play to a film, we used to see maybe one of those a year, like Fences was a big one, or August Osage County, but now we've seen a few of them in 2020, and so we'll see how this one stacks up. Like I said, it is Regina King's directorial debut. It was written by Kemp Powers for the big screen, and he recently wrote and co-directed the Disney Pixar movie Soul, which was excellent. So he may be one to watch. But this is taking place on, as you might guess from the title, One Night in Miami. We actually start with a bit of background in 1963, but on the night in question, 1964, we have a group of guys showing up in Miami for the Cassius Clay fight, who, of course, he later became Muhammad Ali, but Cassius Clay fight against Sonny Liston. And so we have here Eli Goree playing Cassius. We have Kingsley Ben-Adir as Malcolm X. We've got Aldous Hodge as NFL star Jim Brown, and the great Leslie Odom Jr., who is really, I mean, I recognize Aldous Hodge, but Leslie Odom Jr., like, have been following him for a few years now. He plays musician and singer Sam Cooke in this movie. So basically this takes place, like I said, originally we see some background stuff. 1963, for example, we see like Jim Brown going to his former football coach's house, who's played by Beau Bridges, and we see them talking to each other, and oh my God, you've become such a star, what a NFL hit you are, you're great, Jim Brown. And then they needed a dresser fixed or moved or something, and Jim wants to help, and his former coach says, well, we don't allow N-words in the house. And so right away we kind of set the stage with, okay, we see persecution here, even if you are rich and famous and a respected, sports star, or in Sam Cooke's case, a singer. It doesn't matter. You're still black at the end of the day. And so that is sort of what sparks the discussion in 1964 in the hotel room between these 4 men. All of them sort of coming about the race relations in a different way. Obviously, Malcolm X has been known for a more, let's say, militant stance, and Sam Cooke trying to spread his word through his music, but also through publishing rights, explaining that Yeah, some of these white acts took a black song and made it a number one hit on their own. And he actually names the Rolling Stones as one of them. And he's like, but the songwriter's the one who gets paid at the end of the day when that gets played, and that goes in a black pocket, so everybody's sort of coming at things from a different angle, and it makes for a very, very lively discussion, some intense moments for sure between these guys. And what I really liked about this is that even though everybody has sort of a different idea of how to go about working for civil rights, and working to put the black man on a higher pedestal than he is currently. Everybody is sort of open to discussion. Yeah, there's a few arguments and a few heated moments for sure, but in contrast to today's times with all the political stuff that's going on, and Black Lives Matter obviously comes to mind with this movie. There's so much vitriol today, and I admit that I don't post the most flattering things on my Facebook about Donald Trump, but there's so much anger today. And in this movie we see how there's a lot of different ways to civilly try and deal with something. Now, of course, at the end of the day, we know what happens to some of these people. I don't really know much about Jim Brown, to be honest, the NFL star, but the other three, I'm fairly familiar with their life story. So, obviously we have different effects from that, but I think, it's a very interesting conversation, and it's directed impeccably. Regina King, man, I'll tell you what. So the Oscars, have had a problem with nominating black, not so much actors the last few years, but certainly directors and stuff, and as well female directors. Greta Gerwig got famously snubbed last year for Little Women. And in my opinion, Ava DuVernay, she should have been nominated for Selma. Strong black woman, strong black voice. And I feel she got snubbed as well. Now, whether that was because she's black or a woman, I can't say. But if the Academy wants to really, really nominate a black woman who deserves the hell out of a nomination, it's Regina King. She does so well in this movie. And what makes this, I think, a cut above a lot of the other stage to screen adaptations, and I have really liked a lot of them. Fences I gave an A-, Boys in the Band I gave an A, just for two examples. But what she does here is, first of all, she sets the stage beforehand. So the first maybe 15 minutes of the movie, maybe even more, because it is almost 2 hours, maybe 20 minutes, takes place before the one night in Miami. Now, do they do that on the stage? Yeah, probably, but it's not, I'm sure, as gripping, because here she can go actually on location and shoot things and whatever. But when they're in this room, she makes a great use of mirrors, so you can see actually all the guys talking at once, from different angles. And really that is something that you don't see very much. It's usually, okay, this person's talking, then this person's talking, then that person. And Hamilton actually was a good example of, that was obviously a musical, but when they did that as a movie, they just shot it from different angles and stuff, and that's easy to do in, a room of people talking. But to actually utilize the space that you have in the way Regina King has, is very impressive. So let's now talk about the acting, because I think this could get a few acting nominations as well. I'm telling you, this is going to be, and I don't think it's even because necessarily of the Black Lives Matter protests this summer, because most of these movies were shot before COVID even happened. So, take that for what it's worth. But I really think we're going to see a huge black sweep at the Oscars this year, because Ma Rainey's Black Bottom has got to be nominated for some things, including acting for Viola Davis and Chadwick Boseman. I think Delroy Lindo will get a nomination for The Five Bloods, and I really think that at least one of these actors deserves a nomination. My pick, I think because Leslie Odom Jr. is known more, and he does do an amazing Sam Cooke. I think he's doing all his own singing here as well. We know that he has a great singing voice, speaking of Hamilton. But I think he could get a nomination. But I also think Kingsley Ben-Adir as Malcolm X could get a nomination, which, we've seen people get nominated for the same role before. Of course, Joker, Joaquin Phoenix won last year, and Heath Ledger won, 15 years ago, whatever it was, for The Dark Knight. So, yes, Denzel got nominated for Malcolm X, and I think Ben Adir could as well for this role. But really, any of them. I mean, they're all great, and I do think this deserves a screenplay nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay as well. So I think look for this at the Oscars for sure. And I really think I could have given this a standalone review. I could probably go on and on for another 5, 6, 7 minutes about this movie, but I think I'll close it there so we can make time for the other films. But this is, for me, one of the best of the year. It's an A+. One Night in Miami, definitely, it's worth all the buzz. It's interesting to note, too, all of these movies that we're doing today have at least an 85% on Rotten. The Rotten scores for all of these are very high. I'm not quite to that level for all of these, but One Night in Miami has a 98%, and I think that is well deserved. So up next, let's talk about Sylvie's Love. This is actually another African-American centric period piece. This one takes place in the late 50s, although we see it actually through many years by the end of the day. But this was released Christmas week on Amazon, so also fairly recent, but basically takes place in New York. It starts out in the summer of 1957. This dude, Robert, played by newcomer Nnamdi Asamunga. Asamuga. I apologize for that, but I'm not familiar with this gentleman. But he is a saxophonist spending, his nights playing in this band, and sort of not loving it because his band leader is a little bit less talented than he would like. But he meets Sylvie, played by the wonderful Tessa Thompson. She's good in just about everything. And she wants a career in television. She spends her days at her dad's record store watching old sitcoms. Oh, of course, they're present-day sitcoms to her. I Love Lucy and stuff, currently on back in the 50s. But she meets Robert as he looks for a job there, and the two of them end up falling for each other. However, she's got a man already. She's got a fiance overseas, and that obviously is bringing things to a little bit of a love triangle for Sylvie. And we see a little bit of her career aspirations as well. She gets a job working in TV under this, cooking show. Who the woman on the cooking show is played by Wendy McLevin Covey from The Goldbergs, who I always like. But we also have Eva Longoria in a small role in this movie. She's probably the only other name that I recognize anyway in a somewhat major role, but. This is a pretty good movie as well. A lot of things struck me initially with this movie. Number one, we never really see black love stories from this time period. It's very interesting. 50s and 60s movies, okay, well, back in the day, of course, we saw all white casts doing everything, for the most part. So, a romantic drama would certainly, from that time, be based on white people. But we also don't really see a lot of period piece romances with black leads. We just don't. So right away, that struck me as something that's very interesting. And the look of this movie is very, very time specific. The clothing and the hairstyles specifically, they got very well. But look, as a TV fan, when they go to her job at the TV studio, I notice a lot of things that are like, okay, yep, this is exactly how as far as I know, it would have been done back in at that point. It's in the mid '60s in this movie, but so that was all very well done. Tessa Thompson, like I said, I mean, she is a great performer. I'm trying to think of the very first time I saw her. Obviously, the Creed movies are well on her filmography, but let's see what the first thing I saw. Well, I saw For Colored Girls in 2010, the Tyler Perry movie, but that's not. That wasn't a huge role for her. I guess it was the movie Dear White People. in 2014. That was really the first time I saw her. And then, of course, the next year she did Creed, and then she was, part of the Thor franchise, and all of that. So, and then, of course, last year she did Men in Black International, which, by the way, I think got a raw deal. I really enjoyed Men in Black International. I think I gave it a B or something. I thought it was good. But she's really great here as well. Everybody else around her is okay. And that's something that I wish the other actors were as strong as she is. But look, she kills every scene that she's in, which is most scenes of this movie, because it is all about her and her loves. But as we see the years go on, we also see her age a little bit, and I think they do that very well. My biggest issue with this movie, though, is how they handle the love triangle, especially in the last, half to the last third, maybe, of the movie. It's very messy, and they want you to feel a certain way about certain characters, and really, you should kind of feel that way about Sylvie, because she's kind of the one who's messing around or what have you. So, I don't want to give too much away, but I feel like they want you to feel certain ways about people in this movie, and I at least didn't. And so I think the way they handle everything with that is very messy, and I do think it brings the movie down some. But we don't get a lot of romantic dramas these days unless they're of the Nicholas Sparks variety, which are, look, they're tried and true. The fans of the Nicholas Sparks stuff love it. I usually like a little bit more from my scripts than that. Some of them have been okay. I think I've given some of them in the B or C range, but some of them I've also failed. But this is, I think, script-wise, of a higher echelon, but it just gets it's too messy at the end, and I think the movie definitely falls apart there in that last half hour, 40 minutes or so. But leading up to that, I think it's great, and I think Tessa Thompson, another star role for her. I will give Sylvie's Love a B+. All right, so up next we've got Get Duked. Let's talk about this. This is about some white boys in England who are, three of them are troublemakers, and one of them is homeschooled and just wants some experience. So they have this wilderness trek that is, like a Duke's, I forget what they call it in the movie, to be honest, but it's like the Duke's Award or something. So they're taken to, it's not actually in England, it's in Scotland, I'm sorry. They're taken to the Scottish Highlands. It's the Duke of Edinburgh Award, or Edinburgh, but Edinburgh I call it, because I'm white and American. So basically here they're navigating the Highlands as a team. However, they end up being caught off guard by some snipers, and it sort of turns into a little bit of a purge kind of situation. And we learn that is because of their class. They are troublemakers. They are idiots. One of them has an aspiring hip-hop career, but they're all kind of losers, in their own way. The homeschool kid is just a loser because he's never done anything with anybody. He just is a homebody, and he doesn't know the world. And then these other three kids are losers because they just are. They're troublemakers. They are problem children, and they're kind of stupid to boot. So it goes from there. Eddie Izzard is here as the head sniper, let's say, and Eddie Izzard, I followed his career for about, I don't know, 20, 25 years. He actually just recently came out as a gender neutral. He said, yes, he is fine, but also, just call me a they. So I should really be referring to Eddie as a they. But he's done the drag thing for 30 years. That's kind of his shtick. And he's always good. He doesn't pop up in much, but he was in a show on FX called The Riches about 15 years ago that was very funny. But anyway, this is a dark comedy with a lot of drug references, a lot of sort of juvenile humor, a lot of, oh, this guy's so stupid type of humor. I think some of it works, I think some of it doesn't. There's some detectives that are on the trail. Of these thieves that are in the movie, and they are kind of funny because they are also bumbling, um, sort of Keystone Cops esque, and everybody in this movie is sort of it's one of these movies where everybody's sort of over not overacting, but like they're just so blown out of proportion, you know, that it's not believable at all. It reminds me in some ways about some of the like Edgar Wright stuff, not necessarily in the direction, but like just in the tone and by some of the jokes. It reminds me sort of in that vein. I don't think this is nearly as clever as some of the Edgar Wright stuff, for sure. But I do think these kids have a nice little camaraderie. I think you do believe that those three boys are, they have come together as sort of the outcasts of the school, and they've really been tight knit ever since they were kids. And then this other kid enters, and they eventually do take him into their group, but only after really a lot of things go down. I think the drug jokes, I think, kind of get old because they really use them a lot. I think some are funny. There's a recurring gag where they eat rabbit poop because rabbits eat mushrooms, like the magic mushrooms. So their poop is, really potent, and that they bring up a few different times. That sort of gets old. But this movie is also full of surprises and sort of callback jokes that happened 40 minutes ago that you completely forgot about, and all of a sudden it rears its head again, and it's funny. And I think all the kids here really do a good job of convincing us that, yes, they are, sort of loser outcasts of their school and what have you. So I think this movie is definitely good. I'm not going to say it's quite as good as Rotten has with an 87%. The audience scores 66% on this movie. I don't think it's quite that low either. So I think it is in that B minus range. I think I will leave it with a B minus because I don't think it quite captured as much of the humor as I think it was trying to, and I think at some points it was trying too hard to get that humor. But so I guess maybe I am more with the audience. 66%, is definitely higher than average. But yeah. So let's talk now about Time. This is a documentary, and this one has a real wide spectrum on Rotten. 98% on the on the critics. 46% on the audience. Now, maybe some of that is from haters, that this movie is maybe a little too political or what have you. I don't know. I didn't read what the audience said about it, but I can imagine that it might be divisive in that way. So let's talk about this movie. Essentially, it is a documentary based on this woman, Fox Rich. Her given name is Sybil Fox Richmond. But she goes by Fox Rich. She is an entrepreneur. She is an author. She is a mother of 6, and she is fighting like hell for the release of her husband, Rob, who is serving a 60-year sentence in Louisiana for this bank robbery that they did years and years ago, and she got 3.5 years herself because she did a plea deal, but they did not go with one for Rob. And so this follows her journey of trying to get him out while still being all of these other things, raising kids. She's a bit of a car salesman apparently in a couple of scenes. She is obviously a civil rights activist. And basically, it's directed by this gal, Garrett Bradley, who met up with Rich while working on another short film. And she wanted to make a short film about Fox Rich. But once she completed the work on the short film, Rich gave her over 100 hours of 18 years worth of footage, basically her kids growing up. on these mini DV tapes. And so Bradley decided, you know what, I could easily make this a feature then. So let's go to it. And so she's interspersed a lot of current stuff with Rich and some of her kids even, who are now mostly all grown. They're at least teenagers at this point, mixed in with a lot of the, sort of grainy footage from when they were little kids and when, Rob was first locked up. And, well, really, I guess he'd been locked up a few years, basically when Fox Rich got out after her 3.5 years. So basically, this movie, I think, is definitely can be divisive. And I think one of the reasons it might be divisive is that are we really glorifying these two, Fox and Rob, who really are criminals? Okay, sure. However, I think something the movie doesn't quite hit hard enough is that nobody got hurt in the robbery. They only stole $5,000. And yes, it was armed robbery, but does that deserve a 60-year prison sentence? And so I think what Bradley could have done better is really hammer home that, like, yes, we're not saying that these, people did not do the wrong thing. We're not saying these people are saints. We're just saying the system is effed up. And I think they didn't quite hit that enough. It was more like, F the system, my husband should be out of jail, without really acknowledging that, yes, he certainly did do the wrong thing, but it's excessive. And I think, we see Fox on the phone a lot with some of the people, like at the courthouse or whatever, talking about, okay, like, have we heard about his parole hearing? Have we heard about this? And she just keeps getting the runaround from everybody. And she keeps her cool. She keeps her cool until the very end of the movie. She finally, like, has an explosive moment where she's just, so sick of everything. And you can relate because, me, I was getting kind of annoyed too at, the way they were given the runaround and everything. Look, none of us are saints. I'm certainly not, but I also acknowledge that, yeah, I've probably been very lucky with some of my wheelings and dealings with police because I am white. I can't deny that. So I think this movie is interesting enough in the sense that it follows the family as opposed to the prison system or the prison guards or the people in prison. A lot of movies with this sort of theme of, like, the system is unfair to minorities, specifically black. I think most movies go that angle. So I really do appreciate that Bradley sort of did not do that and took us really through the course of the people on the outside waiting for their husband, their father, whoever to get out, And yes, I think 60 years is incredibly too long for, somebody that did, nobody got injured, whatever. Yes, they got caught. Obviously, they were stupid to do it. But I think the 3.5 years that Fox Rich served, I think, is personally long enough. But, as a review of the movie and not a critique on the prison system, we can go back to the movie a little bit. But the other thing I think that's very interesting is the idea of these kids growing up without a father because of this. Yes, stupid mistake. Yes, deserved to be in jail for a little while. But the entire life of his children, no. And I think that's the point that gets hammered home a lot in this movie, and I think it's a well-made point. At first, I sort of thought the video she was choosing from these 100 hours that she had, I thought Bradley was choosing maybe some sort of more, odd pieces or just sort of random things. But at the end of the day, it's more like, well, no, this is slice of life stuff that their father missed out on, because he was in prison. So, I think there's a few different things at work here, and I'm not sure if they all connect. But I think it's very interesting to have this movie in all black and white because, of course, the old footage is in black and white. We don't see a lot of documentaries these days in black and white. We really don't because life these days is in color, and why not have a documentary that reflects that? But because the old tapes are all in black and white. I thought it was a smart move to make also the current stuff in black and white because it also, I don't know, black and white always sort of gives a more dour look to things. You know, there's no brightness, there's no color. So I thought that was an interesting choice. So I liked this movie, but I certainly had some issues with it. I give Time a B. All right, so that's going to do it for this set of movies. I have many more to knock out, as I keep saying. Amazon Prime specifically has a lot of what I want to knock out. I'm definitely going to do the small acts movies because those I think will be up for some awards as well. Speaking of, the Oscars having a lot of black nominations, I hear nothing but good things about several of those small acts movies from Steve McQueen. If I get to the Blumhouse movies from October, that'd be great. I'm not super worried about it, though, because there's other things to get to, such as the Tom Hanks movie News of the World, A Promising Young Woman, both very hot movies right now that were in theaters briefly. Well, I guess still are in theaters that are open, but are now on demand. So I'd like to do those within the next week or so as well. But that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you back here next time. Bye.